Hi guys, my name is Kelly Sansone and I will be teaching you the Seeing Double Blue Hydrangea tutorial. A little bit about me before we get started. I am an artist based out of Northern Virginia. My typical style for my original art is photorealism. If you're not familiar with that, it means that you've painted it so realistically that it looks like it can be plucked right off of the canvas. I do, however, like cutting loose and doing more painterly style paintings, which is what I teach my students, such as yourself. I have taught several hundred people over the last year how to paint in a fun way via virtual paint and sips. And I recently launched my membership program, which you'll read about in your step-by-step guide. If you have any questions or have any trouble during this tutorial, feel free to email me. The information is listed in the guide and during the purchasing process. I hope you enjoy this, and I can't wait to see what you've painted. Okay guys, so this is the painting we will be painting. You should have seen a photo of this in the packet that I gave you. It's a fun painting, and as I tell all of my students that I teach in these classes, every painting has what I call an ugly phase. This one happens to have a very long one, but I promise you if you stick with it and trust the process, it will turn out wonderfully in the end. I know I sent you a supply guide, but I'm going to go over real quickly here a few of the supplies that we will be using. I am using a canvas sheet. This one is 9 by 12, and I have it taped down to my surface with just some painter's tape. I happen to like Frog brand, but any painter's tape, washi tape, masking tape, anything like that will work as long as it's secure to your surface and you don't have to worry about holding it down as you're painting. I will be using 3 different brushes this evening. A large wash brush. This one is about, I'd say, an inch and a quarter wide, maybe a bit more. That is just to do the backgrounds. Any size will do, just something that will help you paint your backgrounds a bit quicker than one of your standard smaller brushes. I will be using this filbert brush. This one is a size 7. Now numbers vary based on brand, so you'll just look for one that is, more than a 1/4 inch in width. You can also use a flat brush that will do just as well. And then I dropped my other brush, but here it is now. I'm just using this, I'm only using this for the signature. This is a size 0, and it's a calligraphy brush or a small detail brush. It's not necessary to have one. I just happen to have it on hand. Any small brush will do if you choose to paint your signature instead of using a marker. Okay? And we're going to get started here in a minute. But first I wanted to tell you the paints. Again, this is all on your supply guide. I am using a palette paper here for my palette. You can use any kind of palette you want. I actually prefer glass ones, but I have small children, so I prefer to use the palette paper, and sometimes I reuse it if there's space on there. I'm, don't like wasting, but sometimes safety is a concern. So this is cobalt blue. As I said in the supply document, you can use ultramarine or even phthalo blue. Phthalo is your typical blue that it's your standard, I guess, primary blue color that most people use, but cobalt gives you a nice crisp color as well. This is titanium white. We've got cadmium yellow hue. The hue means it is cadmium free, actually. Cadmium is toxic, and again, since I have small children and I also, don't like putting toxins out into the world, I use the hue. If you can't find the hue, regular cadmium yellow is fine, or there's another one called Hansa yellow. Naples yellow will work just as well. This is phthalo cyanine, or just phthalo green. It is the blue shade version, not the yellow shade version. And this is burnt umber. Okay, so I'm gonna get started teaching you right now. You do not have to wet your brush, but I am gonna wet my brush just a smidge. It's just totally my preference. here. I usually don't say to do that before starting a painting, but this time I am, because my burnt umber happens to be very thick. So what I'm doing is I'm just mixing a little bit of the phthalo green with some burnt umber. And I'm going to go about 2/3 of the way up my canvas. This gives you a deep, dark green color. I imagine it like when you're looking in the bushes or in the plants out in your garden, and you look between the leaves, you've got that really deep, deep, dark green color, the shaded area. For my students who are in my membership program or have taken any of my classes, I typically don't recommend thinning out your paints with water, because over time it can degrade the paints. And if you want this to be something that lasts for a while, you are not going to want to thin it out with water. So I usually recommend gloss medium, which I absolutely love. However, I know not everybody has the budget or the energy or time to go out and source a zillion different materials. So use what you got. And if all you've got is water, then by all means thin your paint out with water, as I'm actually doing for this painting here. Sometimes with acrylic paints, such as this that I'm using now, you'll see my greens, yellows, whites, and even the blue are very smooth, but this burnt umber is a little thick. That is totally normal. Different formulas have different textures, so you just sometimes need to thin them out a bit. One thing about thinning them out is you don't get as good of coverage on it. It becomes more of like a glaze, which sometimes is fine. And since we're using this as a background and the majority of it is going to get covered up by lots of detail, I'm not too worried about there being some streakiness or lighter spots here and there. Okay. Almost there. I absolutely love hydrangeas. My grandfather was quite the gardener. He had irises and hydrangeas. Those were his absolute favorite plants. I myself am unable to grow hydrangeas. No matter what I do, I end up killing them, so I paint them instead. I do, however, have some irises from his garden growing in my garden, and they are absolutely beautiful. Okay, so now I have my green about 2/3 of the way up, and I am going to now rinse all of the green out of my brush. So one thing I will say is you can do the green first or the blue first, whichever you prefer. I think when I was taking the pictures, I actually did the blue first. So really, whichever you want. The blue part that we're about to do now or the green part can go first. It really doesn't matter. It's totally up to you. So I'm sorry for doing it differently, but human error, I guess. Okay, so I'm taking my blue and my titanium white, and I am mixing a very light sky blue color here. Okay. And again, if it's thick, which mine is not, you can thin it out with some water. And we are just going to fill in the rest of the canvas with this blue. One thing I should note is if you are using a regular canvas or a board that has sides, if you want to paint the sides, that is totally fine. Mine is completely flat, so I don't have anything to paint on the sides. But if you like that look, sometimes it looks a bit more finished if the sides are done. Feel free to do that as we are painting. If you don't want to do it, that's fine too. Another thing I like to tell my students, there's a couple things I say in almost every single class. Keep your beverage, if you have one, pretty far away from your cleaning water, because you do not want to accidentally clean your brushes in your beverage or accidentally drink your brush water. I've done it. It's not fun. In fact, I actually did it earlier today with my cup of coffee. So not a fun experience. And then you ruin your drink. And if it's something, you know, like wine, you really don't want to ruin that. Another thing is that these are just suggestions. If you would rather work with different colors, if you want pink hydrangeas or purple hydrangeas or anything like that, feel free to change it up. If you just want one big hydrangea instead of 2 hydrangeas, again, just change it up. This is your painting. You have to be proud of it. Do what you want. Okay, I have the blue done now. So I'm going to set that brush in water because I'm done with it. And I'm going to let this dry for a minute here. Okay? And we will then start painting the flowers. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video, but I did put in the supply sheet, is a charcoal pencil. You can use regular chalk, excuse me. I use charcoal. I buy them in bulk. They're really inexpensive, and I love them for using to outline where I want the drawings to be, or the images to be on my canvas. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Now this first step is going to look a little funny. It's going to look like spiders. I taught this in a live class, and they did say it looked like spiders for a little while. But what we're going to do is we are going to lay out our image how we want it to look. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves on the canvas. So I'm going to lay out 5 leaves here. If you want 4, go ahead. If you want 3, go ahead. If you want none, just skip this step. Okay, so you'll notice how our leaves curve out from the center. So I'm going to be drawing curved lines to signify that on the canvas. So my first leaf is here in the corner here. So I'm going to start this, and I'm just going to do a curved line like that. Another one, another one, and another one. Then I'm going to come on the opposite side and do the same thing. See how it's starting to look kind of like a spider? Oops. My tape moved. Okay, so I have another one kind of up here. Now this is going to go both on the blue and the dark green area. So we've got a curved line there, curved line there, one here. Okay. Now on this leaf here, you see the full leaf, so we're going to change the angle of our curves when we get down towards the end of the leaf here. So I'm going to show you that right now. So we've got like this. We've got the ones that just curve out, and then when you get to the bottom here, you're going to curve it down. Oops, I must have stuck my hand in paint. Okay, so do our regular lines, and then this bottom one just curves down. Okay, we're going to do another one here. So our funky little spiders will turn into leaves. And I've got another small leaf that you see part of, kind of overlaps with this other one. Okay, and then we are going to draw circles for the hydrangea blossoms. Now one thing you'll notice is that the hydrangea is actually going to overlap over the leaves. That is perfectly okay. You do want to paint them fully, and then we'll paint the flower over it. It just makes it look more natural that way. All right, so I just want a big circle. It doesn't have to be perfect, just a guideline for where we're going to put the flowers. And then this one is behind it, and mine sort of goes off the canvas, and that is completely okay. And Comes around like that. Now the good thing about using chalk or charcoal is that it does completely come off as you're painting, or it will be hidden by your painting. Okay, so now our chalk is done. So we're going to start on the leaves. So now we're going to take the filbert, the size 7 filbert that I mentioned, and we're going to take some green, the phthalo green, and a little bit of your cadmium yellow hue, or just cadmium, whichever one you have, Hansa yellow, Naples yellow, whatever you have. Or if you're using crafter's paint, just primary yellow is fine. Okay, so I'm really pushing my brush into the paint. That's going to load the brush really well. Okay, and I'm going to start with this leaf over here, and you are just going to follow those curved lines that you made before. If there's gaps in between, it's really okay, but I'm just going back and forth over those curved lines that I made. Okay, this will all come together. This is starting that sort of ugly process I warned about before. Okay, just go back and forth over those lines. Just like that. Now we have green spiders. Okay, I'm going to mix a little bit more of my color. And again, as you're mixing, if you have to mix over and over again, if it's not exactly the same color, that's fine. If you look in nature, each flower, each leaf really has slightly different tones to it, shadows, highlights, colors. So we don't have to be really particular about it as we are painting here. And we're not trying to get perfection. This is fun. This is learning technique. This is making an end product and not worrying way too much about technique and how we get there. It's the end goal, right? The end goal of creating our masterpiece that matters. I mentioned that I taught this live at a class. I have a, I teach paint and sips live, and I also do private events. But this happened to be a paint and sip, and it was a lot of fun. And people were questioning. They said, you know, oh, this looks like spiders. Oh, you know, when we started doing the texture on the blossom, oh man, this, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. But I'm telling you, at the end, everybody was pleased with their painting. They had a blast, and they painted some really beautiful hydrangeas. We're in the home stretch with this color. All right. So one of the things about acrylic paint is to make it realistic. You do what is called layering. That is multiple layers of different colors, excuse me, on top of each other to give texture, dimension, and make it look a little bit more realistic. Now we're not really going for hyperrealism here or photorealism. A lot of painting is the illusion of what we are trying to create. So you do enough things to make it look like a hydrangea or a leaf or something like that. And then people go, wow, that's stunning. All right, so now we are going to go back over. This time we're going to mix even more yellow into our green. It's going to be this really bright green color as opposed to a leafy green. This is just a really bright, nice, kind of avocado-y color here. And we're just going to go back in and do the exact same thing, kind of in between those other strokes. Okay? Doesn't have to be perfect. Just coming in and adding more color. And pretty soon, these will start to take shape. But don't worry, we have more layers. This isn't the end of it. This is just one step. One step in this process. Now, if you're using a regular canvas and one that's not taped down to a surface, you can even lift your canvas up and turn it as you're painting to make the angles a bit easier for you, so you don't have to kind of angle your wrist or your brush in weird directions if it is uncomfortable for you. When I use regular canvases, I often do that. Just, you know, pick it up and move it, especially when I'm drawing the initial image that I'm working on. And sometimes seeing it at different angles helps you to see the shapes better, so that you can really see what it's supposed to look like. Okay, so I have this bright yellow done. Now, without washing my brush, I'm going to mix a little bit more of that really dark green that we used for our background. And we're going to go in here. This will be where the inside of the leaves are. If you can see on the sample here, the darker part towards the center of the leaf. Okay, so this is going to look kind of funny and ugly, so just again trust the process. So we're going to come from the center and swipe up or down depending on which side of the leaf here. Just layering, as I said. So just swiping like this, getting the center filled in if there were any gaps in it. Okay. Does not have to be perfect. Just getting color in there and shadow. And we are going to do even more layering, so please, I know this looks hideous right now, but trust me, it will get better. Go. I may need to mix a little more. This painting is, I love it because like I said, I love hydrangeas, but I also love greens and like any shade of green, deep greens. The avocado green is probably one of my favorites. In fact, one of the walls in my home is avocado green. And I can't believe my husband let me do that, but he did. So I love green, so this is so much fun for me, playing with different shades of green and natural nature paintings. Win-win. Okay, so again, without washing your brush, now we're going to mix a little bit more of that initial leafy green color that we made. And we're going to go back in, just randomly making some swipes. Now you can see I did switch the angle of my brush. You don't have to. You can do it flat, or you can use the tip of your brush as I'm doing. This just gives thinner strokes coming in like this. I'm going quicker because I don't need as much detail now or as much pressure or anything. I'm just coming in, just adding more and more texture to this painting here, or to this leaf. And you see, as you're doing this, the leaf really does start to take shape here. Okay, last one. Okay, so now we are going to take that kind of avocado-y color that we did, but this time we're going to add just a tiny bit of white to it. This really brightens it up, gives us a nice cool shade. And we're just going to come in and do the same thing again. And you can do this as many times as you want until you get it looking how you want it to look. Now, some of the leaves you may want to add more layers to after this. Some of them you may look at them and go, this is perfect, I'm not going to touch it again. And that's okay. Just keep playing with it. Layering is beautiful and a relaxing process. Hopefully relaxing for you. So this one got a little too bright, so I'm coming in with the regular green over it and just toning it down a little. I may need to do that a little bit more here. And then I need some of the dark in the center again, just to help tone this one down a bit, because I went a little hog wild with that paint. There we go. But most of that one's going to get covered, so I'm not too concerned. All right. Regular green coming in. Blending. Dark green. Now this time I'm just doing it in the center, just to kind of blend that center out here a little bit. I think I'm going to leave that one alone now. Adding a little bit of the regular green in here. So just touch it up as you see fit. No wrong or right here. Okay. I'm just adding a tiniest smidge of water to this to thin it out a bit, because it was starting to dry out on me. Acrylics do dry fast. There are some tricks to preventing that, such as using that glazing medium I mentioned. Or you can spritz it if you're not too worried about the longevity. You can spritz the palette with water as you go. To keep it moist. So I'm just going in and I'm really fiddling with it. You don't have to do that too much. I'm just playing around with it, getting it more how I want it. Okay. one last little touch there. And I think we're good to go with the leaves now. I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'll be right back to show you the blossoms. Okay, now, and we're back, and to swap out the camera battery as well. So my leaves are dry, and I've still got the circles kind of highlighting where I'm going to have my blossoms go. So all I'm going to do right now is just load my brush with this cobalt blue, and I'm just going to fill them in. You can use a larger brush for this if you want, but I figure why dirty another brush unless I have to. So I'm just going through just wherever I have that line, that circle, the line for the circle. I'm just gonna fill it in. This doesn't have to be a perfect edge. We're gonna be doing lots and lots of petals here, and you're gonna want the petals coming off the edge. So, and you also don't have to have this perfectly filled in. It is just enough to really provide a background so that you don't really see the leaves and the dark background through your petals. So just get a blue base in here. And I know this is a darker blue. We'll be mixing quite a bit of white into it as we're painting. Because I know this is not your typical hydrangea color, but it will look better once it's all painted in. Okay, so you can see, not perfect, just getting the color down. Now I'm going to do this other one over here. So as I said, we're covering up quite a bit of the leaves here, and that is perfectly fine. You, when you look at a hydrangea bush, the blossoms just really spill out over the leaves. If that bothers you, you can of course make your blossoms a bit smaller so that you see more of these leaves that you did work so hard to create. But again, totally up to you. I'm just making suggestions. Okay, so it doesn't really matter how well this part dries, because we're going to be going back over it with blues. I'm just correcting that circle a bit because it was kind of lopsided there. Okay, so this process is a little funky. So while I'm describing, I'm going to make this one a little bigger. We are just going to be moving our brush in all kinds of different angles. Lots of random brush marks. We are going to be starting with this one because the other one is over top of it, so it's easier to paint the bottom first rather than trying to come in and paint under or around any petals that we've painted over here. So we're going to start here first, and with that same color, it's not going to show up that well, but you're just going to start doing lots of different directions with your brush. Okay, and remember what I said, you don't want your edge, and you see my green is a little wet here still, so that's gonna show through a bit. You want your edge to be petally, or not not smooth. But you can see here, I'm really just turning my brush every which direction just to get texture. You probably can't see it all that well through the camera, but there is texture, and on your own canvas you'll be able to see the different texture here. Okay, so just doing random brush strokes, making sure that my petals are around the edge. Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit of white here to make a lighter blue, and now I'm going to add some random strokes in that color. Now again, trust the process. I know this doesn't look great. This is part of that ugly phase I was telling you about. And it will continue to be ugly for quite a while. We are just laying the groundwork here. You do not have to go as fast as I am, and of course you can always pause and catch up. Okay, so the edge here, I want to have a lot more white. It's going to be brighter. It's the furthest away from the other flower. It is going to have the most sunlight on it. Okay, so lots of random strokes here. Okay, now I've got my basic colors laid out. So now I'm going to come in just randomly, adding more brightness. I'm going to bounce between the dark color, adding little flecks of dark, and adding little bits of white every once in a while. And it may blend in, and that's okay. You want that. This is, you know, a still very wet painting. At least the blossoms are, and that's okay. You want the colors to blend and get these streakiness, and really kind of, you know, flowers have so many different dimensions, and in order to make it perfect, you would have to spend hours just doing little teeny tiny strokes. And I don't know about you, but I just wanted to get this done fast. So I am doing a more abstract approach, and just coming in here quickly, and trust me, it's gonna look just like a hydrangea when we're done. Okay, so now, as I mentioned, I'm randomly coming in with, you know, darker and lighter here. Just some plain blue here and there coming in. And a few little white flecks ever so often. Really focusing on keeping this edge sort of bright here. Okay, get a few more darks. And you'll see, again, I don't know if you can see on through the camera, there will be texture. There will be thicker spots of paint. That is fine. It will give it even more of a realistic look, almost like it's sort of popping off the canvas for you there. Okay, I think this one is done. So now I'm going to wipe the excess paint off of my brush here, and we are going to start the process now. Oops, you know what? I need to touch this up here a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to start the process on this side. So again, with the plain blue, random, and yes, there will be some paint from your brush that mixes, and that's okay. We will do the random layering again, but you're going to just do mostly just the plain blue right now. And again, just be sure to just move your brush around. That is the important part. Just move your brush around. Different angles. That's what gives it that realistic petal look to it. Okay. Do a couple more plain blue. And then I'm going to go back to adding a little bit of white. This was a bit too much white. So coming in, different angles. Just all over the blossom here. Actually, it's a question. Is the whole puff a blossom, or is each individual teeny tiny flower on there its own blossom? I wonder. Okay. Now, just like with the other one, the further over you get, the more white you're going to want to add. And remember, we're painting a little bit over the other one, and it may blend some, and that is okay. That is okay. The point is to just make sure that this part is brighter so it sticks out more, and you can really tell that it is overlapping that flower. Okay. You can hear some noises. I think my husband is filling his water bottle up upstairs in the kitchen. Okay. So now we've got our sections here. We're going to go back in and do the same thing we did before. Just random darker spots, lighter spots, ever so often. And again, some of it will blend, some of it will not, and it's okay. Okay, a few little random dark ones. And you just play around with it until you are happy with it. And you know what? I think I am pretty happy with this one here. Maybe make a few more dark petals in here. Maybe a bit more. Okay, I lied. I'm not happy yet, but that's okay. Just a few more here and there. Just going back and forth between light and dark until you get to a happy place. And I think that's good for now. I think, and I say that and I keep brushing. All right. And okay, so as you can see, you can keep messing with this for hours, but I think that's pretty good. All right, so the last step now, I'm just gonna take my the thin brush I told you about, and I'm gonna use some of that really dark green mixed with brown. And this I am getting a bit runnier because letters, you really need it almost like an inky consistency sometimes. And I'm just going to sign my name here. It actually got a little too dark, too much brown there. So I'm going to go back over it. And sign my name. All right, guys. You have made yourself a beautiful hydrangea painting.